Brian Kelly debunks the silliest Garrett Nussmeier rumor yet. We'll talk about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So Brian Kelly was on the SEC coaches teleconference Wednesday morning and then met with reporters again after practice on Wednesday evening. So we have a lot to hear from Brian Kelly as he updates the week. But we'll begin with Brian Kelly taking time to debunk yet another silly rumor, and this one might be the silliest one yet. There's an old adage, for as long as the internet has existed, you can finish the sentence when I start it. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. And unfortunately, all too many LSU fans are looking for, and that's not unique to LSU fans. It's just, I think, the human nature in general. People want to believe conspiracy theorists. They want to believe theories. They want to believe they have scoop. They want to believe that they're in the know of something. They want to believe salacious details. And sometimes there's just nothing to it. The thing that I always say is consider the source. If you hear some type of breaking news in the NFL, it comes from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, chances are it's true. Jay Glazer. In college football, if it's Pete Thamel or Chris Lowe or Matt Zenitz, Pete Nakos, chances are it's true. These are good, Ross Dellinger, these are good, credible reporters who pay their bills. They pay their mortgage. They support their family with this as their job, to cultivate great relationships, to get good, detailed information, and to be responsible journalists and reporters, and to report information about the sports, the teams that we all care about and love. And certainly locally, there's a lot of those as well. If you read something on a message board or on Twitter from an anonymous name claiming to have a source, sometimes common sense has to reign. And when nobody with an ounce of credibility is reporting that Garrett Nussmeier has a torn oblique and is going to have surgery and be shut down for the year, it should make you go, I wonder if that's true. But unfortunately, that rumor spread like wildfire. And unfortunately, doubly, is that, I don't know, just about 6 weeks ago, the same thing happened when there was a stupid rumor that somebody started about Garrett Nussmeier tearing his ACL at practice. And Brian Kelly, when we, the media, were waiting to meet with Joe Sloan, had an impromptu press conference to address and debunk that foolishness. Well, Brian Kelly found himself in a similar situation on Wednesday morning. He's on the SEC coaches teleconference. This ridiculous rumor spread from somebody with a fake name, an alias on a social media platform. It was claiming Garrett Nussmeier was going to have surgery and was going to be shut down because he had torn his oblique. And Brian Kelly, unfortunately, had to take time on the SEC coaches teleconference to address this.
That's misinformation. Those are not based on any facts. They're quite silly, actually. And I know you have to ask the question because people want to know, but this is misinformation. Yeah, early on, he had an ab strain, not a core injury in terms of what a core injury that we deal with. And it's been slow to heal. But as I have mentioned, he's on the backside of that. And he's getting rest this week. And he'll be the Garrett Nussmeier that he needs to be as we get into the very difficult part of our schedule.
I don't know what else he can say, because I think for many people, no matter what he says, it won't satisfy you. The offense does not look right. Garrett Nussmeier at this point a year ago was averaging about 330 yards per game. 5 games in, right now he's at 230 yards, but 100 yards off the pace of a season ago. A year ago at this point, he had 15 touchdown passes. Right now he has 7, but I'll remind you, 6 of those a year ago came against Nichols, an FCS opponent. Yes, you had an FCS opponent this year. Nussmeier looked awesome, threw 3 touchdowns and didn't play the second half. You might remember in the second half of that game, Nuss did play almost the entirety of that football game against Nichols because you just couldn't seem to separate. The defense couldn't put him away. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole again. But the point is, I know for some of you, no matter what Brian Kelly says, it won't satisfy you. You're going to want to believe whatever you want to believe. So believe what you want to believe. I'll continue to say the thing over and over again that I've said for probably 6 weeks now, which is in the same sense that the knee tendonitis, the patella tendonitis, wasn't nothing because it's literally something, but it wasn't affecting him to the degree that anybody thought it would. I think this is similar. Brian Kelly said it. He had something that slowed him. They were very cautious with him during fall camp, had him on a pitch count rep so as not to turn. I don't know how you can look at him physically against 2 weeks ago, as great as he looked physically, and then think that something all of a sudden went badly. As a matter of fact, Brian Kelly was asked that after practice on Wednesday. Keep in mind, he looked physically, Nussmeier looked physically good. I'm not talking about the score again against Southeastern. I'm talking about physically. Turning, throwing deep, accurate zip, timing, all that stuff looked great, right? And then a week later, they play very poorly against Ole Miss. So he was asked the question. I left the question in. You'll hear it.
Not to belabor the point on Nuss, but did he aggravate that ab strain at any point before or during the game against Ole Miss?
No.
So he looks great against Southeastern. He doesn't aggravate it or strain it during practice or during the game. LSU had an awful offensive day all around. He made poor decisions. It was a poor lack of attempt at running the football. They didn't run the ball. They faced 8-man fronts. They faced drop 8, I should say. They couldn't run, couldn't protect the passer. It complicated everything. It was a terrible offensive day. It doesn't mean Garrett. Let me remind you, if you're an LSU fan, by the nature of the fact you're watching or listening, I'm assuming you are. I'll remind you that in 2020, Miles Brennan tore his oblique in the game at Missouri. He was done for the season when he tore his oblique. Walker Howard, former LSU quarterback now at ULL, earlier this year, very unfortunately, tore his oblique in a game. He had to go to the Andrews Institute in Birmingham and have surgery. He's done for the year. You don't tear your oblique in fall camp and play through it. That is a season-ending injury. Just use some logic. And the next time you see something salacious and ridiculous, consider the source. Who is reporting it? And if it's not coming from someone credible, then you shouldn't believe it. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Now, Brian Kelly did also go a little deeper into how they've been managing Garrett Nussmeier during this time and what they're going to do with him during the bye week. And also, he was asked about Michael Van Buren and if we might see the backup. You'll hear all that as we continue here, Locked on LSU, your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays. I've tried player props, even followed live lines during the game. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. That's FanDuel.com to download the app today and to get started. We're also brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. You know, there's certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or the beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When the neighborhood business thrives, the whole neighborhood thrives. So share the neighborhood love. Check it out. What's your favorite neighborhood spot? You know, we've got a spot down the street where love to pop in on a Friday night and see a lot of the locals and regulars, maybe have a cold beer and watch whatever games are on TV. And Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. So as Brian Kelly took some time to debunk the, as he said it, silly rumor about Garrett Nussmeier and surgery, and hopefully we don't have to answer those questions ever again. He was also asked about how they have managed Garrett Nussmeier to this point with whatever's bothering him with his torso.
Our training staff and physicians have treated him with medication, and that's been part of the procedures and protocol. But we knew coming to this bye week that this was going to be the time for us not to be pushing him. This is where he could really, truly be, the best version of himself. So, I think our training staff's done a great job. And again, I think you're going to see the best football as we move forward from Garrett Nussmeier.
I will remind you that after the Florida game, and that was the first time, the Monday after the Florida game, that Brian Kelly sort of disclosed the, as he said, the torso issue that Garrett Nussmeier was dealing with. He said we wouldn't be able to shut him down until the bye week. Well, the bye week's here. And it would have been awesome. And he said at the time, by the way, that he was on the backside of it. It would have been awesome if you'd found a way to beat Ole Miss and you'd gotten to the bye at 5-0, and we probably wouldn't be as anxious and anxiety-filled about this thing as many LSU fans are, because you realize it wasn't great offensively. There's concerns about Nussmeier now from the fans, and you've really lost your margin for error. You've only got one more game to play with the rest of the way. So you're 5 games in, you're 4-1. You've got 7 to go. You need to go 6-1 realistically, and you realize you still got tough games. I mean, you've got Vanderbilt coming in, which won't be easy. You got Texas, or you got to go to Vanderbilt. You got Texas A&M coming in. You've got to go to Bama, to Oklahoma. I mean, there are landmines all over this schedule, but such is life in the Southeastern Conference. But we still haven't seen LSU play their absolute best. And we'll see if Brian Kelly is, in fact, being truthful. And if you give Garrett Nussmeier the opportunity to just sit this week and do nothing, what might it look like on the back end? And that was the other thing Brian Kelly was asked, like, what will this opportunity just sit for Garrett Nussmeier do for him?
A lot of mental work this week, in terms of film study, looking at the things that he's done during the year. So just doing a really deep dive and, offense in particular, the things that he can control within the game that he wants to get better at. He was really good on Saturday in the run game checks and getting the ball out when we didn't have fair numbers. We want to build on that. And then we want to build on, obviously his consistency in terms of, the pocket. And he's great to work with because, he wants to do all those things on VR. We can get him on VR. There's a number of different ways for us to build on what he needs to do on a play-to-play basis without having him out there throwing the ball 100 times.
That's obviously the most important thing is Garrett Nussmeier feeling as close to 100% as possible. But remember, the VR component that Brian Kelly's talking about, that kind of became was made famous by Jaden Daniels when there was a feature done on all the VR stuff that Jaden's doing. And LSU has a ready room in football ops. It's actually really cool if you ever get a chance to walk by it. It's not a super deep room, but it's probably maybe about, 10 or 15 yards wide. And it's a big screen. You stand in front of the screen with the VR goggles, and you effectively can run through a game. And Jaden Daniels did that. He got all the mental reps through VR. And that was sort of made famous at the time. And that's what Garrett's doing now as he tries to heal through all this. Now, the question a lot of you have asked also is about Michael Van Buren. So if Nussmeier is not healthy, if he's limited in any way, which Brian Kelly continues to say he's not, they're not limiting the playbook. And by the way, he's not lying. They took 7 shots that traveled beyond 20 yards downfield against Ole Miss. That's the most of the season after he looked his best against Southeastern Louisiana. So they are opening up the playbook. Like, that is objectively true. You can't say they're not doing that. Now, you may not like what they're doing at or near the line of scrimmage, and I agree with you, by the way. I think they need to turn around and run the freaking football. I mean, we've run through this stat before. I charted the entire game, and there were 2 instances in the entire game against Ole Miss. Listen to me. There were 2 instances in the entire game against Ole Miss where LSU ran the football on consecutive plays. One of them, both were Harlan Berry in the second half, by the way. One of them were the 2 plays inside the 10 where Harlan Berry got to the goal line and then scored on the next play. That's it. I mean, 2 times the entirety of the game did you run the football on consecutive plays. Like, that's mind-boggling to think. So I didn't like the approach at all that they took offensively. In any event, a lot of people have asked about about Michael Van Buren. Is this an opportunity maybe for Michael Van Buren? Brian Kelly was asked specifically if there's a package for Michael Van Buren, maybe in short yardage, where he could be utilized.
Yeah, we have that package in. We have short yardage runs for quarterbacks. It's just I'm not going to take Garrett Nussmeier out of the game to run short yardage. So we've predicated all that on the type of formations that we run in short yardage, and we gear it towards our quarterback. If he's not our quarterback, we have some different answers if it's Michael.
I'll tell you, I know there's a lot of people that would like to see something like that, some wrinkle. For me, I want to keep Garrett Nussmeier on the field. And so if you want to run something like that, the package we've seen is with Juwan Johnson. It's not just me. I mean, they ran this in the spring game, the spring scrimmage in Tiger Stadium. They ran a goal line package in a goal line series where Juwan Johnson was taking direct snaps and throwing and running, and Nuss would just flex to the left. So we know those plays are there. I think I'd rather see them run with Juwan Johnson than Michael Van Buren, because I would rather Garrett Nussmeier staying on the field. You can be creative in the run game, and I hope they will be. I mean, if you're not going to be simplistic with it, just trying to play some power football and moving bodies and getting a hat on a hat, then get creative with single wing and things like that. But if you're going to do it, I'd rather keep Nussmeier on the field and use Juwan Johnson, who in many situations is already on the field. And one thing's for sure, though, as Brian Kelly said, with Garrett Nussmeier being shut down this week, it is a big opportunity for Michael Van Buren.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great opportunity for him. We're going to give Garrett some time to rest here this week, make sure he's fully at 100%. And Michael got a lot of all the first team reps in articulation, so he did a great job. He's still learning, but as we said, we feel confident in his ability.
I think for the LSU fans or the collective college football fans that watched the second half against Southeastern Louisiana, you might be a little higher on Van Buren right now than maybe the staff would be as far as a confidence level, because coming from someone who got to watch a lot of fall camp, I'll tell you, there was a lot of fall camp where Michael Van Buren and Colin Hurley were not impressive, even throwing against air. Now, some players are just gamers. Like, they're just, the lights come on and they're better. I think there's something to be said also for Van Buren 2 Saturdays ago against Southeastern Louisiana, coming into the game up 6 touchdowns against an FCS school in the second half that was completely gassed and beaten down. It wasn't exactly a big challenge. So it'll be interesting to see how Van Buren continues to progress. And this is a really good opportunity for him with Nussmeier shut down this week for Van Buren to get reps. But the other piece of this that I will acknowledge, and this will be music to some of your ears, is that the reason you went and spent the money you did to bring in Michael Van Buren was for a situation potentially just like this. If Garrett Nussmeier is hurt or is injured, everybody plays hurt. If he's injured, then the reason you went and got Michael Van Buren was so you had someone with SEC experience who could keep the train on the tracks until Nussmeier came back. Now, in theory, the opportunity to do that might have been against Southeastern Louisiana, but again, Nussmeier looked awesome against Southeastern Louisiana. And it's not because it was Southeastern. I'm talking about physically looked awesome. Drive, throwing the ball downfield, all that sort of stuff. So hindsight's 2020 in that respect, but you do have Van Buren there as a possibility, and this could be a valuable week for him getting the reps that he's getting. Now, the thing I'll tell you that I did not like really in any way, shape, or form was when Brian Kelly was asked what they're going to be working on, what he would like to work on offensively this week with the open date. I wanted to hear him talk about finding a way to run the football. That is not what Brian Kelly said.
I think first and foremost, the details of the passing game have to be better. And that is from a coaching standpoint and a playing standpoint. We just need to be better there. Look, Garrett threw 15 touchdown passes at this time last year. He's thrown 7. I think we averaged over 300 yards passing the ball. We're well below those numbers. Everybody wants to talk about the running game, and I get it. But we also have to accentuate the positives of this team. And that's our skill players and our quarterback. So the problem for us more than anything else is we have not been elite in the passing game. And so that's been a huge focus this week. It doesn't mean we're not working on getting better at the running game. We're working diligently there. But my point being is our passing game has to be much more explosive than it has been up to this point.
I would agree with that, but it's a chicken or the egg conversation. Can the passing game get better without the running game? Or do you need the passing game to be better for the running game? I would point out I would use Brian Kelly's own words. If you're facing drop 8, 86% of the defensive snaps, then you've got to be able to run the ball to bring numbers into the box to give you more passing lanes. That seems very obvious to me and very elementary, but I'm not the one coaching the team or calling plays, and we'll have to wait a week from Saturday when LSU welcomes in South Carolina to see how that may go. Now, Brian Kelly also gave an update on some other injured players, Caden Durham, Aaron Anderson, Weston Davis, Paul Mubenga. You'll hear all that as we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. You see, Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Plus pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. And we're brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, just a couple of taps, saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Brian Kelly did spend some time on Wednesday updating some of the other injuries to players coming out of the game against Ole Miss. And maybe most notably is Caden Durham. So Durham suffered the ankle sprain against Southeastern Louisiana and missed the game against Ole Miss, a game where LSU really struggled to run the football. And right now the Tigers are 121st in the country in rushing offense at just 104.8 yards per game. To Brian Kelly's point, they need to be elite passing. They're not passing terribly. The Tigers are 46th in the country at 259 passing yards per game. So the passing offense hasn't been top 10, but it's been playing good enough. They need to counterbalance it with the run, and getting Caden Durham back will certainly help.
He was better today, much better. We ran him in our run tracks and some team run. Did a better job. I would. If he continues on this path, I'm pretty optimistic that he'll be in good shape for next week.
And what?
I was certainly hopeful that with Caden Durham out, we would see far more of Juwan Johnson and Harlem Berry carrying the football. But in the first half against Ole Miss, you only had 2 rushing attempts by scholarship running backs. One by Caleb Jackson on a draw on a 3rd and 20, and one by Juwan Johnson where he was knocked for a loss. And then, of course, it was Harlem Berry in the second half, who kind of got going a little bit for LSU, but again, it was just too little, too late offensively, for the Tigers. Running the ball, Harlem Berry against Ole Miss, 7 carries for 22 yards, a long of 9. He did have the touchdown, an average of just 3.1 yards per carry. So you really got to see if you can get that offense and the running game going. Now, the other player that's certainly notable that was injured in the game is your leading wide receiver, Aaron Anderson. We know the play late in the first half where Nussmeier sailed the ball. Anderson went up for it. He got hit and got dinged in about 3 different spots, as Brian Kelly said, who gave the update on Aaron Anderson.
He had a litany of things: hip, toe, knee. Yeah, he's banged up. If we were playing Saturday, I would say he was, he'd probably answer the bell, but he's going to benefit greatly from the week off.
And then there was the follow-up question about Aaron Anderson.
And you think this week off will get him ready for the South Carolina game?
Yeah, I think modern medicine will get him ready for the South Carolina game.
Look, obviously these guys are really tough, and we all know the reality of it. We talked about Braylon Moore playing on a bum ankle against Florida. And, it's what you do. You tape it up, you get a little happy juice injected into the area, and you get out there and you try to make it happen. You hope it doesn't compound the issue and make it worse. The other injuries that Brian Kelly did discuss, Weston Davis, who was injured in pregame, suffered a concussion pregame, so he's in the concussion protocol right now. And Paul Mubenga also suffered a high ankle sprain in that game when he got rolled on. So you look at, you're starting right tackle in Weston Davis, who's in the protocol. You're starting left guard in Paul Mubenga, who's now got a sprained ankle. You've got, of course, you're starting center Braylon Moore, who sprained that ankle now, a month ago, but has still played through it. So Karius Kern filled in admirably along with Cohen Eccles. We'll see how it looks when the Tigers take on South Carolina a week from Saturday. All right, we are rolling through this edition of Locked on LSU, and we're super grateful to have you aboard with us here. I know there's no game this weekend with LSU as they are on the open day, but I will continue to churn out content here on Locked on LSU. And, every single day. So Brian Kelly won't have any more media availability for the duration of the week, but there's certainly never a shortage of things going on, not only at LSU, but around college football that affect LSU. So we're going to be here every day, and we hopefully encourage you to continue to join us here every day throughout this week and the open date on Locked on LSU. And as we get into game week next week when the Tigers will be taking on South Carolina, and there's a lot to watch this weekend as well when you talk about LSU's future opponents. Vanderbilt plays at Alabama this week. Texas A&M has a very tough game as they welcome in Mississippi State. So a lot to keep an eye on for LSU this week for future opponents as the Tigers kick up their feet on this bye week. Of course, over at Locked On, it's another big moment. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Okay, y'all, that's going to do it for us here. If you are on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.